Would everybody rise, please? The Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Navarro, will you lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody know we're in a big room today, but please feel that we're still intimate with you. Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Acker? Commissioner Acker is absent. Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Boley?
Here.
Commissioner Daniels is absent. Commissioner Darren?
Here.
Commissioner Davis is absent. Commissioner Goodman?
Here.
Commissioner Navarro? Vice Chair Young?
Here.
And Chair Craig.
Here. Thank you. Report of the posting of the agenda.
The agenda was posted last Thursday, May 11th, and it was posted at City Hall, the city's website, and at the Leisure Center as required by established policies and procedures.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Any corrections, additions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
2 abstentions. Commissioner Goodman, Commissioner Darren. Any correspondence?
We have none today.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comments. Anybody that would like to come up and speak, if you'll please come up to the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. My name's Jay Keller, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and many of the people here too, to do the kids program that Vicki helped me with to organize. We had approximately 50 kids come to play pickleball, which was kind of a shock since just Dean and Nancy were there at that time. I'm a former teacher, as are a few more here. So we got recruited to help, and eventually I became, how does that happen? Suddenly you're in charge. I don't know. Anyway, that was fine. So we started, with over 50 kids. We had donations and I believe some money from you for paddles and balls and so forth and equipment. And we're soon to start classes at the Jesse O. James Highland Unity Center starting later this month to teach kids in that area. And just in case you're not familiar with pickleball, I brought a paddle here for you to see. And this is an outdoor ball. This green is an indoor ball, and the difference is the size of the holes in the ball. If you'd like to take a closer look, you're welcome to. And then we had a few 5 and 6-year-old kids come. So they weren't really quite mature enough to play pickleball. So I got these soft, squishy balls for them to play. And so they had fun. In fact, that little frail-looking girl, about 7, asked, we were doing a class, and she came and said, "Can I have my turn?" And I said, "Yes, in just a minute it'll be your turn." So she came and played a little bit, and suddenly, out of nowhere, she just slams the ball clear across the court, right into the corner. And I'm going, whoa, surprise, huh? And she came meekly to me and said, "I call that my domination shot."
That would be all of you.
That was really cute. So we're really happy with that. Thank you again for the opportunity to do that. I appreciate it. Then a entirely different matter, if I can run 2 into my 3 minutes. maybe you saw in the news, a 16-year-old, 200-pound boy died in South Carolina last week from ODing on caffeine. And I bring this up because he had drank 3 caffeine drinks within 2 hours, and he had cardiac arrest and died. I bring this up because I'm surprised that the food machines in the park, in the places, the city, Parks Rec, all it is sugar and caffeine with about 20% salt. And I know, I've taught in Hermosa Beach, we haven't had soda for kids for over 20, 25 years. And I know it's a moneymaker, but I'm just asking that the council review the items that are in those food machines. Like, we all know somebody, maybe you know, a woman named Michelle Obama, who spoke for healthy foods for kids. And I think as the adults, we need to set that example.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? With the paddle, when you
Yes.
said 5 and 6-year-olds, can they hold that paddle as well?
Well, there are different paddles. If you'd like to hold this one, there are some that are lighter.
That's
a little
very
bit
light.
lighter and
But the
smaller.
size they can
The
manipulate?
sizes, well, no. You
Okay.
know, actually, they
But it's
can't.
all one standard size?
It's pretty much a standard size, but they do vary in weights.
Okay.
And as I said, that's why at the spongy ball, the little kids, they could at least practice making contact with the paddle. So they had a great time, I think. They came back every week.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for the time.
Hello, I'm Mary Blackman, Palm Springs resident. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. Our passion is pickleball. I'm an ex-physical education teacher, and I know that age appropriately, it's not the best sport for a 5-year-old, but they can begin working on their hand-eye coordination, and they did love it, especially with the right equipment. We need more courts. It is a big phenomena all over the nation, this pickleball. It has caught on everywhere. I imagine you've heard about it. I know you've had Dean and Nancy here speaking with passion. I've only been playing a little over a year. Just got back from being up in Cambria for a few days. Played up there on their excellent, excellent courts. They're outside. They're even arranged with markers in between each court, so you have little like tennis fences, which is wonderful because then nobody's ball's running into somebody else's on a court. We just really need more courts here, and I'm hoping that you will consider supporting this sport. We've got a lot of people that are going to Demuth and up to James, what's it called? Oh, Jesse Park. I've been there, I forgot the name, sorry. And we really need more courts. We've been taking collections a lot of times to pick up, to buy more nets and balls, and Nancy and Dean have gifted us many times to help too. But we would love to ask for a little more support. It's a wonderful game for all ages. Any of you want to come out, we have lessons on Monday at Demuth, but we could probably help you with some lessons too. So it's a wonderful game. Do you have any questions for us? We're passionate about it. It's played all over U.S., Canada. People come in, snowbirds, to play for their month or so here, and it's just an amazing opportunity to have more friends through sports.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please.
Just was wondering how many more courts you all would like, and you are aware that these pickleball courts, particularly with Chair Craig, I mean, the commission has been a big-time supporter of these courts. I mean, that's why
Yes.
they're there. So I did want to correct for people watching. I mean, the commission has worked really hard to create these courts over the last year or two. So I didn't want the impression out there that the commission hasn't really supported pickleball.
No, and we realize you have, and because it is growing so much and there's more and more people all the time, we just really would like to ask for even more support. I believe we have the next speaker is going to talk about that.
My name's Adri Rojas.
Can
I'm
you say your name again?
Adri Rojas.
Thank you.
And actually, Dean couldn't be here, so he had talked to me. You know, I think you know, Vicki, about the section to the west of the current pickleball courts. Dean has measured that out, and 4 more courts would fit there perfectly. And it would take up all that grass. And I mean, I'm just throwing things out. Dean would have much more better things, but in terms of prices. But I think he said it was going to cost like $100,000. But there is a grant available from the state that he knows about, that if you're promoting childhood or adolescent sports, that you can actually get that grant. And I know we currently have 8 courts up at Demuth, and I was there this morning. There's, you know, the ranks are thinning now, but I'm telling you, this is my 2nd year that I have played in the height of the season when we have visitors here. All 8 of those courts, so that's 4 people on every court, that's 32 people. And I know many people here can attest to the fact that we probably sometimes have 15 to 20 people waiting to get on courts at the height of the summer, at the height of the season. And it's just a tremendous draw for our visitors and people who come here. And there's just no, I mean, the train's running down the track, and we just ask that you just stay, you know, give us as much support as you can. And that's Dean's ideas, is to put in that extra 4 courts. That would be an extra 16 people playing. So anyway, thank you. If you have any questions? No?
When you say 4 courts, are you talking about, when you say, you're talking about 2 courts then, correct?
No, well, we're talking about...
When you say 16 people.
Another 4 courts would accommodate 16 more players, because you always play doubles, and so 1 court is 4 people. And the way the courts are laid out up at Demuth, there's one on top of the other. You know what I mean? They run north-south, and there's a court and a court, and there's enough room for, actually 4 courts there, 2 and 2.
So it would be like 2 sets of tennis courts.
Yeah, well, actually, 1 tennis court, if you take in the margins of a tennis court, will convert into 4 pickleball courts.
Correct.
So where you have 2 tennis players, you can now have 16 pickleball players. Okay?
you.
All right, thanks.
Vicki, do we know where that grant is available?
I'm sorry, do what?
Do we know where the grant is, where we would access the grant information?
I can go to California State Parks and Rec's site, but I don't know if there's another site other than that.
Hi, my name is Dean Groover. I'm with a company called SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, and I was brought out here in December because the gentleman that ran SIR out here passed away. And I'm from New Orleans, and basically I've been here looking at what the Parks and Recreation does, and I'd like to contribute and help. We provide audio, backline is instruments. If you guys are looking to do charitable events, we're here to help you, and that'll get my name out there. I have business cards that I'll drop off with you, but anything to do with music, we're the largest in the world. Our Palm Springs store is the smallest of the 15 nationwide, but I'm here, and I'm here to help, and I'm looking for people that are involved with music and the children. That's what I'm looking to help. I mean, like I said, I'm out of New Orleans, and SIR came to us back after Katrina, and the owner, Dolph, he extended so many wonderful things to us, and then he brought me into the picture, and now I'm out here in Palm Springs, and I'm available to help you guys with things at the park. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you make sure you give your card to Vicki, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Dave Paquette. I actually live in Cathedral City, but I am the president of the Palm Springs Pickleball Club. And in the wintertime, we have about 187 members, and it'll probably grow more this upcoming season because more and more people are realizing that this is a great place to play pickleball in the wintertime. What happens is, everybody's been talking about, is the courts just are overflooded. We don't have enough courts when we have the winter population here. summertime, we can get by without a problem. And we've also helped, we got a kids program going now where we're getting more youth involved, and they're going to want to play pickleball, throughout their life, and we just need more courts. However we can do it. I know that there is a grant available. I don't know what we've got to do to qualify for that grant, but Vicki knows about a grant where there's some money available. If we build some more courts, the city can get reimbursed. Now, we are also generating some income from pickleball also. As Vicki knows, Mary and I have rented the courts 3 times during the last season to host round-robin tournaments. So now pickleball is also generating some income from the city, so it's not just an expenditure. There is actually a way to make income from pickleball. And we'll probably be wanting to do more of these tournaments as the years progress. So I just, whatever we can do, we just need more courts. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Thank you. Anything from the city manager?
Not at this time.
Okay, moving on. Discussions or actions, Measure J Task Force update.
I was wondering, actually, might we, maybe I missed the timing for this, but do you want to have the next one, this conversation, which is pickleball, which is on the heels of the pickleball
I'd appreciate
conversation?
that.
And if we flipped it, then, you
Yes.
know, people,
Yeah. we
while
will
we're on
flip
the
that.
thread, thank you.
Okay. Move on, discussion, additional pickleball courts, recommendation, direction staff.
As you know, we're currently in our budget process, and when we're not only dealing with just our staffing and our departments, we're also looking at capital as well. And one of the projects I submitted was to build additional pickleball courts at Demuth. I know that Chair Craig had sent a tape out, and I believe it went to the city manager and several of our new council members. And at the city manager's direction, he was looking for direction from the commission of what your thoughts are and what direction you would like for us to move in. Now, I know that when we reviewed, had budget meeting a week ago, that project was not on the top 5 list. It was, I believe, down under the unallocated at this time. So I know the city manager is looking for a recommendation from the commission on how to proceed, so that if somewhere down the line the next year or so, or maybe might even be this year, I don't know how they're going to do the allocations, funding could possibly become available. I don't think David at this point is ready to totally commit to it, but is looking for direction from the commission on how you would like to proceed with your thoughts on, do you think we need more pickleball courts, or what we have is sufficient? So that's kind of where we're at right now. So it's open for your
Okay, discussion.
discussion.
So I'd like to go on record indicating that we absolutely do need more pickleball courts. I'd like to see if we can work on the grant to determine what exactly the grant is capable of helping us, so that we can understand how we can grow this. I have some interest in, obviously, in expanding Demuth Park's capability, but I'm also wondering if there's an opportunity at the James O. Jesse Center to do even one tennis court size, if we've got the opportunity to start educating the kids in that program at James O. Jesse. So what I'd like to see is, first of all, what the grant capability is, and then so that we can determine how we can move forward. But I would like to see us. I mean, it's the fastest growing sport in the country.
Other comments?
So, you know, this to me is about priorities, and we have some community members coming and saying we want more courts, but we have other priorities too. We have children in our parks, equipment, dog park, and so there's procedurally, I have a little bit of a concern saying this is a priority when we don't discuss it within a whole host of other kind of priorities that I think are really important as well. And that's why I did want to make clear at the beginning of our meeting that this commission, particularly under the chair, has done just an amazing amount of work to bring these courts to the community. So when I look back at how long it took issues with the dog park, I mean, this has been amazing how the commission has been able to act so quickly and create 8 courts, and also at Demuth at the community center. So, you know, the idea that this is a fast-growing sport, you know, the flip side of that is where's the longevity of the sport? Is it a fad or not? Seems like it's growing and growing, but, you know, that is the concern I have at some point. So, you know, what's going to be in the future? Do we? And one of the speakers mentioned, you know, other communities. I'd really like to know what other communities, how many other cities are adding these courts, because we could have a glut of these courts. And that's something we've talked a little bit about, but I don't really know exactly, you know, how many courts in the valley are going to come online. You know, I'm a little bit concerned about the grant, because when I've been at the pickleball, it's mostly not been children, so I'm not sure exactly how we would finesse the grant unless we could talk about we're going to be using it for more children, because the grant that was mentioned seemed to be about for young people. So I would like to see at this point, you know, us discuss some buy-in from the community to raise money for these next courts, because what I'm concerned about is we do 8, and that's why I want to know what the number, 4 more, and we're going to have community come back and they want another 4 and another 4. And so, you know, we have spent quite a bit of money on this and taken away from tennis as well. And so, you know, I think the conversation about what investment the community can bring in to these more courts is something we should have as well. So, I mean, I hate to say it, I just really don't support the commission saying $100,000 for more courts when we have so many other needs for our parks in general and for children.
Thank you. Commissioner Bowling?
Was that $100,000 cost, is that to convert a tennis court, or is that to start and build one from the ground up?
That's to build one from the ground out without lighting. Yes. Well, it would be 4 pickleball courts, yes.
It seems like it would behoove us to look into this grant and see if we can get that as our number 1 step to push the funds, if it's not priority in the budget at this point. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Goodman?
I'm going to just piggyback on another comment from a commissioner, and that is with a sport that's growing and a very strong advocacy group, and I want to also say we have a very strong dog park advocacy group, and there's some groups that are really strong, and there's land that has a tremendous amount of traffic, and there are programs that have definitely more traffic than others. And instead of maybe piecemealing and saying, let's look at the grant, and I'm all for looking into the community and maybe even assessing membership to at least come to the table with something, but maybe it's really looking at this from just a bigger scope. And we might want to have a small little task force. I would love to come out and see, and I will take you up in your invitation on a lesson on Monday. And I mean, I realize it's summer and our seasonal residents are gone, but really what does the carbon footprint look like from one month to the next? What is the need? Where is the growth? A grant is rarely a multi-year. And so if you get a $100,000 grant and you build something, what's your then sustainability of what you built? So I think it's very complex. And because the commission has been so supportive and really interested in this sport and the growth of it, I think we should shy of doing, you know, not an assessment, but like an impact report to really say, okay, this is exactly what it is. And then I would feel comfortable then making a recommendation to city manager. So that's just a thought.
Thank you. Miguel?
What sticks out to me of one of the comments that I heard was about the kids program, and I think that's amazing that we're starting to get them to play and that they're loving it. I'm just thinking of wouldn't it make sense to look at like the high schools and their tennis courts? Because I know we had a discussion a couple months ago that the tennis courts at Palm Springs High School weren't used as much as they probably could be used, and they're even kind of closed off to the public. I was just thinking, considering that as an option, maybe converting one of those into like the kids program, or just a comment.
I'm not sure that the group is looking more towards it being a kids program as it is for the adults because of the amount of growth they have. The kids program has kind of been more of an indoor thing and not so much outdoors. But it's been both. Been both. And the time that the kids are there, it's, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where the adults are there earlier in the morning. So, the issue with the high school is you're going to have the problem of having people on school campus during school hours. And, and is the school district going to allow us to make modifications to their property? So that would be, you'd have to, go through the school district and even to entertain that idea before we could even.
I have a question from the gentleman who said about renting the courts. How did that get, how much are you paying, and how did that come?
They're paying $10 an hour per court.
So they rent it?
Yes.
They have to put in?
They rent it, they had to provide the insurance to have their tournaments.
So there's paperwork before it all comes about?
Yeah.
It's for the tournaments.
for
It's
the
not just for
tournaments.
regular use.
Right.
It's for tournaments.
It's just like any of our facilities or any of our courts. Any tennis court or any ball field for an event, you pay and rent it and provide the insurance and run your event.
But you rent it for a specific number of hours on a specific
Yes.
day?
Yeah.
In fact, I'd reported on that previously, that they converted 2 of the tennis courts that were adjacent to the existing pickleball courts and rented them so that they could have more people on the field when they were playing.
Was that at Demuth Park?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the 2 courts that were adjacent, the 2 tennis courts that are adjacent to the pickleball courts were taped off, so they actually created additional pickleball courts so that they could be used for the contest.
I had a few comments I wanted to make. First of all, I wanted to say to the public that's here, I found over the years attending city council meetings that a high percentage of the times that there was a lot of people coming and speaking on a subject. I started to see an attitude of the council going in that direction. And I think from the city manager's comment when I sent the film, the NBC Evening News piece on pickleball from 3 or 4 years ago, which I think basically sums it up soup to nuts on it, that was the reaction that I had gotten from the city manager, and I sent it to the 2 new council members and the mayor, and I got similar responses about it, that they're aware of it. I said, when I see an ad like this in the newspaper from a complex that's opening, and they're showing pickleball, that I know it is an up-and-coming sport, all the above. But I think the public needs to step up and let the city hear a lot of voices. And when you see that, I've been to council meetings where one person will say, well, everybody that's here in the chamber, please stand to show the support of this, and they see an overwhelming, I find that that's very effective to get a point across. The city has a budget, they're working on it. Could they decide to add something, do something? That's up to them completely. But they tend to react to things from the public in all directions, I've found. That's my consensus over the years. So I would encourage coming to public comments. The agenda's a little different today. Public comments usually don't hit till like 10 o'clock at night. But that's, and a lot of people don't stay. But that's effective if they see something like that, unless it's on the agenda. If it's an agenda item, you can speak on it when the mayor starts in the beginning of the meeting. If it's public comment, that goes later in the evening. I think the word just needs to be gotten out that way. this commission still works on, it isn't priorities in that sense. Commissioner Armstrong is correct. There are many things that we have coming to the table on that, like the dog park, like things that are going on in the playgrounds for children today. I mean, in the parks, in the playground areas and that, safety, security. We are having a lot of discussions about all of that today. So I thank you all for your comments, and you have the respect of this body, and we all know that it is an up-and-coming sport, but it has to be where we think it fits in. But I encourage all of you and your friends and the people that play to start letting the city council hear you. And I think that's an effective way to be able to get the point across. They react to how we react, and they want to know how we feel. And the consensus here is there's an attitude here, there is support, but we're just not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Would that be fair to say? Please.
Question of Vicki. Could you, just so that people in the audience are watching know, what are some of the other capital items that you're requesting? So, because it is about, we have a limited amount of money. What are the other things that we're asking for in addition, if we had asked for pickleball?
Let me see if I can remember. One of the major things was the converting the gymnasium at Demuth Community Center from swamp to AC, because currently it's on swamp. The pickleball courts, redoing the floor at James O'Jesse, putting in a new floor, replacing that. That floor there is probably about 20 years old. So those were the three major ones that I put in. Some were just smaller things, like another light tower for the pool, because we have two, but in the shallow end, because of the bulkhead, we don't have enough lighting in that area, so we'd be able to enhance some night programs in that area of the pool if I had another light tower there, so.
And those are all responsible things that we would commit to in recommendations. Please.
I just want to make sure that we provide David with what he had asked for as far as direction. And so I'd like to know if we'll be able to today make a recommendation for Vicki to go back to David on how we might proceed forward with the conversation.
Thank you. Then do you want to make a motion, or?
I mean, I could make a motion that the council pull together a small task force to look at the project, the scope and the scale of the project, and the sustainability and the grant, and really look at it so we could better understand what it is that we'd be eligible for as far as funding. So I guess I would create a motion to put together a small task force to look further into the pickleball court expansion and to go a little deeper into understanding what the grant might be and the ultimate sustainability of the program.
Second?
Second.
Second. Discussion?
Vice Chair, did you second that?
Yes.
I guess I have one just question, maybe, and I support that, but I just want to make sure that in no way takes away from, I think our support of the updates at the community centers. Those are so important to me, so I wouldn't want to send a message to the council that because we're doing that, somehow this is more priority than the community centers, which need so much. I mean, we've talked about this, the community centers, how much work they really need to be where we want them to be, because to me that's so important. So I just want to make that, I'm going to support that, but I just want to make clear that it doesn't mean that those are less priorities. Right.
And maybe we need to add to that motion is that this is really an investigation.
Yes.
That it really is to be able to unearth that information so that we can then come back to the table and really talk about and then make a decision on a recommendation moving forward. So I don't feel like I have enough information about this project to really be able to vote on it, and so that, I see it more of that, in that way. Thank you.
And I also think that when Vicki told us the items that she had proposed, pickleball was one of them, the floor in the gym, the air conditioning at the swamp cooler, the city manager only asked about the pickleball. He didn't ask about the others. So that's why it's a good idea to do an investigation on that item.
Let me also maybe say that it might fit appropriately into the program subcommittee. And Commissioner Davis isn't here, but, you know, we're looking at programs and we're looking at scales and contracts, and so we are looking at swim program, we're looking, right, at the stadium use, and maybe this fits into our next, and we did skate park, so maybe that's where it would fit, and that we do some work together on that and see what we can come back with in the next 60 days.
Does that work with you on the 2nd?
Does that work for you, Les?
Sure, absolutely.
Vicki?
Because I'm not sure how quickly, you know, because normally during the budget process, it's general fund budget that they kind of look at first. I know we had the joint meeting with the Measure J Commission last week as well with the budget process, and of course they made their recommendations for the top projects they wanted to fund. So whatever the city manager might decide and/or council, what additional money there may be available to do any of the projects, you know, that's kind of up in the air at this point.
You know, it
And-
also-
And when they'll make that decision. You know,
Right.
will they pass the capital portion of the budget when they pass it, hopefully approve the budget in June? Or will it may take them a little longer? You know, last year for the special allocations they did, it was probably September before they made the final approval on allocations that way, so.
Was David looking for direction now in anticipation of this budget approval, prior to the approval of the budget, or long-term?
His comment, after Sid sent him the tape, was he wanted to know what the council's, or the commission's thought was on it. Is the commission in support of this project? Not meaning that if you support it and say you support it, I don't necessarily mean that David's going to move it forward to happen this year.
Vicki, when you say this project, are we talking about seeking a grant and adding a new, basically 4 new pickleball courts, or are we talking about converting an existing tennis court to pickleball? Because the conversion, I think, is like $10,000.
Right, we're not doing conversion, we're building from the ground up, but I'm not looking at a grant. It basically was put in the budget for capital projects that would be funded by the city, whether through Measure J or through, you know, whatever other source the city may have money. And I know right now our Quimby funds are being allocated for the downtown park, so that would be the city manager's and council's decision on where the funding would come from.
Okay. Well, I just
I mean, the
think-
grant could be a potential, but I haven't heard anything. The last information I got on the grant, I know that Assemblyman Garcia has proposed another bond issue coming forward for Parks and Recreation for the state. He had an initiative he tried to get through last year, it failed. He's coming back again with another initiative, and it would probably create somewhere around 30, 40, you know, $1 billion for the state to statewide for all the cities to be able to have access to funds for improvements to their facilities and cities.
So if we do recommend that the city council have its own task force on this issue, they'll run all the different ideas against the table. They're not just focused only on the possibility of building laying new concrete, so to speak. Is that correct?
Right, because I'm not sure where we would do a court conversion. We've already, I really feel I don't want to, you know, we don't want to upset the tennis players that live in the Demuth Park area any more than some of them have been, and taking away another court. So the thought was to.
That's the difficult issue, though. The task force could probably try to weigh everything, so when they come back.
Right.
You know, we know what their thinking is as to all the alternatives.
And it may be that, you know, the commission may be tasked with that, of finding all the information and then relaying it to the council, David through the council, of, you know, here's our findings, and, you know, we're supporting this, and this is justifying the need.
I think it was also the idea of the building from the ground up. The purpose of that was, we started with one court, then we went to a second one. It went, when it first was discussed at the city council meeting, there were some people from tennis who got up and spoke, and the council did vote in favor of converting the court at that time. And then they were asked the question, the tennis people said, we want to be able to keep the far west court. And the council didn't want to make the decision, so they laid it very cleverly and said, we'll let the Parks and Rec Commission decide that. And it came to us, and we voted, and we recommended to give pickleball to the west court. So there were tennis people that were not pleased. And then we had the second one converted. The recommendation or the thinking is it would not be a smart move to start changing courts 3 and 4 and taking away all tennis from there, even though there was discussions about Ruth Hardy Park, so many people play. It wouldn't be a smart move for this commission, in my opinion, to say let's convert all 4 of them. So the idea of leaving the 2 tennis courts and adding 2 additional ones because of the stats on the growing numbers made sense. That was why it looked like that was the way to go if this was how we felt about it. So to me, the pickleball court stands by itself in the sense that the other areas that we want to talk about and the areas that Vicki took to the city of things that we need improvements on, the floor, the air conditioning, all of that, those are all things that I think that the city, from my experience watching, could end up supporting. The education of pickleball of people who don't play it. I was never a player. What we did before you were on, Commissioner Goodman, is when the pickleball people first came to us, a group of us met with them in the morning at the court, and they did a demonstration for us on Court 4, which was then a tennis court, and they were makeshifting the nets. And that's how we all got an education on it. There were people there that day as well from tennis who were telling us why they don't like the idea. So there's always been, both sides have had an opportunity to speak. The majority seems to have been more people are coming about pickleball than people dissenting about the tennis. But the opportunities, public notices were given. Vicki put out that there were 2 times on that day that there would be a demonstration from pickleball. So it was public notice was put out of the 2 times so the public could come and listen and see and watch. There was very few people from tennis came to those meetings, to those, right, on the location.
Yes.
And so that's how it all ended up coming about at that time. But the council supported it because there was a lot of testimony, again, from the public at that meeting. So what I'm asking is, when David sent the email after he looked at it and wanted to know what the commission's attitude was about it, if the commission voted one way or the other today, does that take away from any of the other things that are on the list that you gave him?
No, again, it's, other than the 5 that Measure J has asked to be considered, and I don't remember what all of them were. I know there was some improvements to, I think, one of the fire stations, remodeled the police department. I believe the items I have submitted and probably other projects by other departments are on kind of an unallocated list right now.
Right.
So currently haven't been denied, but haven't been approved for funding yet either.
Right. And realistically, the money that was spearheaded by Commissioner Goodman with the Measure J, even though they voted on that, I wouldn't spend that money after the meetings that I've been attending or seeing. They're not looking at, they're not responding to it, but they're definitely put it in the back of their minds. Would you agree, Commissioner Young?
I would absolutely.
So that may be a moot point. That may not even be something for discussion with this.
So can I ask, just this, as I reflect, this might just be even a clarifying comment or statement. So $100,000 was submitted for 4 new courts, and we've got about 6 weeks until the budget needs to pass, right? By the end of June, we need to have a passed budget, the council
As far as
the city has
the
to pass their
city
budget.
in way of where you would consider payrolls and that type
Right.
of thing.
Okay.
There's no, I don't think, an urgency on capital projects, which would be major J projects, but.
Right,
the
and that's
city's
why they're
general
on the
fund and-
unallocated. I mean, they're
Right.
kind of in the parking lot right now. I personally don't see any reason why to remove the pickleball from what you've submitted, and you've already submitted it.
Yes.
And so it's in front of people. My experience with government institutions, $100,000 is actually very reasonable, especially if it cost $80,000 to put a shade structure up at Mizell. You know, you can get a whole lot of people moving. Look, the kid thing, I do it for a living. I like the kid thing. And so, and grants that are for children, oftentimes we try to figure out if we can secure grants for young people. The side effect is a lot of adults get to the benefit of it. So I mean, I like all of those components, but in the scale of things, $100,000 seems to be actually affordable in capital projects and probably wouldn't put a dent in a ton of other things out there that the city needs. So I would like to move I see that you'll make a comment, but I'm going to say that I'd like to move the conversation forward with David, that it stay exactly where it is. And if the city chooses to keep it in unallocated until they're able to entertain it, but I wouldn't recommend removing it.
Well, we do have a motion, which is a good motion, but hearing all the discussion and Vicki clarifying kind of the budget process and hearing what the city managers asked you, I would be okay with if we could get $100,000, it doesn't come at the expense of other park capital improvements, I'm fine with that. But I mean, I think maybe to give Vicki and the city manager direction, if we had a motion saying, these other things, especially the capital improvements at the community centers are a priority before this money for the $100,000 for pickleball, which we did have some concerns about. I mean, my worry is that when staff goes back to the city manager and says, okay, there was support for this, that somehow through the process, these other things that we've been talking about for a long, long time, especially at the community center in the northern part of town, which needs a lot of work, as well as Demuth, somehow in the process become not priorities. And I think that would be a real shame. Both Demuth and Jesse James, serve part of our community that is really underrepresented. Pickleball is not really an underrepresented faction in this community. Those community centers really serve important populations, and so I would, regardless of what we do, I do think the city council needs to understand that those are more priorities than more pickleball courts. We've already added so many courts.
I mean, would it be unreasonable to say that this is, take a very serious look at it for the 18-19? So we're going into the 17-18. I wouldn't want to put anything on hold for a year, but the way the city moves, it could be a year before 4 pickleball courts come up. And so where they might need some answer in the next 6 weeks, we actually might be able to do better if we have a little longer period of time to put something very solid together. And so if we took the next 4 or 5 months and really developed this, and then went forward and put an expanded measure or expanded conversation together for the 18-19 year.
Other comments? I have one concern. I'm split many ways on this. I'm mixing apples and oranges in the sense that I'm looking at the other things that are needed for the community centers, and I don't look at one over the other from the standpoint that here's something that's going on in our community that's getting more and more press, that more and more people want to do. 26% of our population at the present time of Palm Springs is in the age range that pickleball is advertising to. The fact that youth are coming into it, which is another market of people going on. I don't look at that as saying, well, if we tell the city manager that the consensus is we support this one of the items, but we want you to know it does not dissuade from any of the other things that are on the list, why that's not enough of a statement to make. Versus, I don't know what it is that we'll do in 4 or 5 months with this information, because if we don't give a recommendation, which is a choice, I don't see where David is going to turn around and say, okay, then then number two, how does the commission feel about the roof? How does the commission feel about the floor? He had the list of 5 things from Vicky, and he didn't ask about the other ones. So that's where I'm wondering, he didn't look at the other ones as less of a priority. He just wanted to know what the consensus of this group was, since we were the ones who initiated them building it to begin with. So that's where I'm at odds with the situation of that, saying I don't see where one will have anything to do with the other. I don't know if David Reddy, if he's told that, yes, we do, the consensus is we support $100,000 for additional 2 more courts, that he'll say, well, then that's where the money will go, and it won't go to the roof, and it won't go to the floor, and it won't go. I hope I'm right in my thinking.
An expansion of pickleball courts is a luxury. And so I don't think the city's going to question you need air conditioning and you need floors and you need capital improvements. And so it's not surprising that they would want a recommendation and this, robust conversation.
Because it's a luxury.
Well,
right?
it's an enhancement.
Yeah,
It's a luxury.
enhancement.
I would remind everybody that at our offsite, pickleball came up in several different areas, including one that I had forgotten about, which was shading pickleball at Demuth. So a commissioner had listed that as an item. So we did go through that red dot exercise and where we put these in, but it is, if you pull your document, you'll see that it is listed several times, one time with dog park. And, looking at both of them, dog park, second dog park, off-leash, preserve style, and there was one where it listed, I think at Victoria Park, looking at pickleball and dog park for Victoria Park. So it's been on our list as part of that exercise.
Okay, so help me through this. I'm going to retract that
You can
motion.
retract.
And I'm going to put a new motion on the table. I would like to move forward and continue with the support of Vicky's $100,000 in her budget for pickleball courts.
I have a question for Vicki then. So as we're learning more about David Reddy asking this, so do you believe that because we're talking about luxuries and needs and, the idea that we've been hoping to redo this floor for 20 years, I think? It's 20 years since. So there's no guarantee that it's not going to be 21 or 22 or 23 years. And so my concern is that somehow in this process, these really needed things get lost, and we're responsible because we haven't made clear our priorities, which to me would be a real disservice to these communities that Duluth and Jesse L. James serve. So in your discussions, do you think they understand that those have our support? Because in our retreat, we talked a lot about facilities and the backlog, even from things like drinking fountains. We need all new drinking fountains in the parks. So do you think that those are sort of shoo-ins for the money, or they may look at this and pick some and not others?
And that could be the case. They could, again, it's council who's going to make the decision. Even though Measure J has presented their findings and what they're recommending, that's not necessarily what city council may want to recommend. And I can tell you that there are still projects that were unallocated from last year that are still back on the list. So they haven't gone away. It's just when will they have the funding to move forward with
And
those
so that's my
projects.
concern with the motion, because if I'm just on the council and I see the commission has supported this motion, that could come off as our top priority, not these other things that we've been talking about in the community for years and years. And so somewhere, if this motion does pass, I think it needs to be communicated that we're not putting it priority above, just because we have a motion, above these other things in the community centers that really need work.
Well, I think really what the city manager is looking at is he got some information from the Chair Craig that was also sent to some council members. And so the city manager's comment really was, how does the commission feel about this? He's not one way or the other, saying he's supporting it. He just doesn't know where does the commission stand on it. Nothing else was brought to the city manager's attention of the other capital projects. And this happened to be something that was brought, and I had, not even sure David even realized that I had submitted as a capital project yet. So it was just kind of emails between a few people, and then the response back was, what does the commission think? And what would be their recommendation? So,
Commissioner?
One thing I think we need to let him know is we have tremendous input from the public, not only today. This is probably the fourth or fifth time in the last 6-8 months we've heard from people asking for more. And that's what we need to let him know, that the public is asking us for them. Number two, your gym floor was on last year.
Yes, it
and
was.
just got kind of shoved to the back. Maybe it's a little more priority this time. If we push this as a priority and we don't get it, the worst is maybe we get it for next year. So we push and see with our recommendation, and if we don't get it, maybe we'll get it up there closer for next year at least.
And I think when we go to a vote on this, if it should pass, it's not saying it's a priority over the other, it's answering his question. What was the consensus of the
Of the
feeling?
commission.
And we've been, the public has come to us on many occasions. Consensus is the following, yes or no, and it has no basis of any change in priorities on anything else that was requested.
that's correct.
Should that be her motion?
That was my question to the motion maker, if it could be amended to make clear that by supporting this, I mean, obviously, we could get this money, we got everything else in our capital budget, that would be really great. But is there any way that we can make clear that by passing this motion, we're not favoring this project over the other projects? Because as Alan noted, I mean, we've asked money for the floor before, and it could easily get pushed back. I mean, to me, when we have discussion of this gets press and we have a lot of community, you know, a lot of people can't come to these meetings, and especially people over these community centers are serving don't have the luxury of coming here. Thus, I do wish Commissioner Davis was here to talk about, you know, particularly one of the community centers. And so I do think we have to be, you know, recognize that there are a lot of people that use these centers who just can't come to the meetings or may not want to come to the meetings for different reasons. And so, again, I don't want to, you know, reiterate this too often, but I do think we need to make clear that this is not a priority over these other really important parties that we've been asking for a long time.
I think it's just a case of the city manager asked a question, we're going to give him an answer. It has nothing to do with any of the other things that are on the list that are going on, and I don't think we can really think about so-and-so of this community didn't want to come, or didn't. This is a public notice is put out, we follow the rules, we follow the Brown Act, and if people come, they come. There's a group of people that came today. The people have got a right to come and speak their minds, and that's what it's about. That's why public comment is being held. So I just look at it as a question asked and answered.
I love this. We really gave it a lot of thought. It's a lot of conversation.
Yep.
I agree with Chairman. And I think if there's too many layers on it, it delivers a lot of different conversations. And so I would amend the motion to say that all of the things on Vicky's lists are of great concern and top priorities for us. And that we have heard from the pickleball community multiple times in our year here, and that we support that recommendation. But otherwise, I would say if you don't like the way the motion is and it's on the table, vote against it and bring a new motion on.
Does the second accept that? Unless there's further discussion, we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. So we've given an answer to the city manager that we recommended. You better all be at the council meeting, you know.
Well, and one thing, is the budget on the city council meeting this Wednesday night?
Yes, it is.
So the budget is on, hence pickleball could speak at the front end, not at 10 o'clock, because it's on the agenda. It
Yes,
is
it is.
budget related, front end,
Wednesday night, what time is that meeting?
6 o'clock?
6 p.m.
And it's, and
No, here.
Find us all in favor of the floors and gyms and the
Absolutely. Yeah, nothing is considered not important here. Thank you. We're moving on with the agenda. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Yeah. Go to Measure J meetings also.
Please.
Okay, so we're moving on to our next one. I will give you an update from what I know, and then I'm going to ask some folks to just jump in and add to it since I wasn't here last month. So just a really quick overview. Measure J made their recommendation to City Council, and that was just last week. There was a very hearty discussion around that, and a $2 million for Parks and Rec and $2 million for PS1 were their recommendations. And now backing up, if I'll just let everybody share with everyone that about 6 or 8 weeks ago, the task force met, and we met with the Arts Commission. We really, after Measure J suggested the $2 million, it did have a caveat that said $2 million to Parks and Rec unless the City Council felt that they needed it for the downtown park. And with that caveat, I know that I felt, and I think others felt, that that money could easily be diverted to the downtown park. And so we quickly met with the Arts Commission and started to float ideas of if we were to take the Parks and Rec's proposal, which ultimately the theme is safety, shade, safety, and usability, if we were able to all work together, you know, what could we come up with that really would make Measure J very proud and the city very proud, but also satisfy a residential need around our parks. A couple of people went to the Measure J Commission meeting last month and appealed to Measure J to remove their caveat or reconsider that caveat. And it felt, from what I had heard, I wasn't there, that there was a lot of confusion left with Parks and Recs after that initial motion was passed and suggestion, and some confusion may be left on the Measure J Commission. So that was some feedback that I had received.
Well, and to that point, we were asking, with talking about the topic during comments, we understood that they couldn't discuss it with us, but we were asking if we could then have it brought up at their next meeting. However, during their discussion, they decided it's a budget issue, falls under budget, so we will go ahead and discuss it. So at that point, we had made our points, fortunately. When they restated their motion, they left in that
Yes, they did.
requirement.
And they left that in when they presented to City Council. There's a lot of interest in the task force. There's a lot of interest in the Arts Commission to work together, and I really do think Measure J has a lot of interest in parks. And I really just don't know what the future of their recommendation will be after the City Council meeting and the discussion that the City Council members had about really what is the use of Measure J funds, and can Measure J funds, you know, what is the definition of infrastructure and where it might be used. Then there's been some very hearty conversations on the PS Neighborhood Facebook pages around that as well. So I'm left with, and I'd love to hear from everybody and their thoughts, I'm left with maybe developing a more narrow focus for the $2 million that is really very, very specific and can make a huge impact and a change that will appeal to the Palm Springs community. Versus saying in the proposal, which of course we didn't have a lot of guidance or a lot of time to prepare that we want shade, we want safety, and we want increased usability, and it can look like it can look like this particular image And then that image would be built out over 3 or 4 phases, because one of the council members did ask, what are these different phases and what does that mean? So I really do feel that where it was really very broad and it covered all of our points from our work session on our retreat, I think that it was very confusing. And so we might want to consider, and then Alan, you were there at less, and anyone else who might share, but we might want to consider really narrowing what can we do, what do we want to do with the 2 million, what's our recommendation, and the difference it'll make for our neighborhoods. So, and I said you weren't at that council meeting, or
No.
thoughts? Measure J has said that if they have a meeting, which they did say to the commission, the city council, that they would have another meeting that we could get on the agenda and go back and discuss this. But I think that if we continue to stay broad in a vision, that it will get lost and diluted. And I think the way to go to city council and say, look, parks, Sunrise Park needs help. We've heard that from the community. We know that it's a very caring thing. We know that it will deal with a homeless situation, which came up at the city council. And if it's not Sunrise Park, maybe it's a dog park, or maybe it is 2 pocket parks, or maybe it's just street calming everywhere around all the parks. But I do think the only way this will get entertained, this is just my instinct, the way it'll get entertained is if we can get as specific as possible. And PS1 is very specific. They are going to do A and change the way traffic intersections are. The hotspots, yes.
I agree with you, Ellen. One of the things that is a little confusing to me, though, is Tuesday night this week, there was a meeting where Measure J presented to the council, and they said, what about the homeless? And that was brought in as, would that maybe be part of this? So it seems like we have 2 things that we're working against. Number one, the downtown park might use up some portion of our 2 million. And then there's the secondary thought of, is there a way that homeless can somehow use up some of the money? So it's kind of, I'm wondering if they need to make their decision and tell us, okay, we can move past theme now to an action plan.
Did you want to speak?
What do you mean, move past theme to an action plan?
Well, we were tasked with bringing a theme forward, and we brought a theme forward. We took 2 months to get a theme together and a retreat. I'm hard-pressed to think that in 6 days, which I think their meeting is coming up next week, we could get together some sort of a hardline action plan in that period of time.
Well, not action. I wasn't suggesting action, just a narrowing of a focus. I think it was very broad what we presented.
I think I saw at that meeting, close to half of the people in there were very much on board with our idea. Not quite half, maybe. They were a little swayed by the legal definition of their caveat. That came from legal counsel type thing. And some of them were not sure why that was there, because I thought we got some very strong feedback from several people in that room. They had to bring their motion back up because they had put it in the minutes incorrectly, so they restated their motion right before we talked. And I think we had a lot of confusion with the people that voted against us. They didn't understand what we were talking about, truthfully, the whole picture.
Right. Yes, I would agree with that.
We tried to dance around, I think, saying, we're trying to clean up the homeless problem by redesigning the park. And I guess we needed to hit the nail on the head and tell them, this is what we want to do, A, B, C, D, step by step.
Right. And it's interesting. That's going around as the downtown park.
That was Tuesday.
Right.
Excuse me, Thursday night.
Thursday.
They had it set up here in the convention
Right.
center. Pictures, and everybody was given red dots.
Can we stay on what we're talking about?
No,
And not-
it's almost,
Okay.
this is just the downtown, so.
I know, but
Thank you, okay.
we can bring that up under updates. Need to. And you know, on council agenda for tomorrow night, they do have a discussion on homelessness. So,
I mean, if the city council, and it was really very hearty, you know, what can Measure J money actually be used for? What really is considered infrastructure? And, you know, what does this commission really want to do with $2 million? I mean, we met in our retreat, we went to a task force meeting, we brought in other commissions. $2 million does not go very far.
No.
And, you know, capital improvements is critical. There's no question. $2 million could probably go quite a bit with capital improvements. And I guess that just did not, in our retreat work and in the task force meetings, capital improvements didn't fall into the theme that Measure J had requested. As a matter of fact, Measure J requested a theme, and I think our theme kind of fell short because it was so broad, and what I've seen over the last 2 months is really our theme is safety. And inside of safety is shade, safety, and usability. And, you know, I think if we, and I don't know if we even have the opportunity to go back and say, this is our theme is safety, which really complements hotspots. And this is what it will look like if you take one park and redesign it. And we could hit all three of those. I was in Sunrise Park yesterday. I looked around. I have a feeling even a remodel of Sunrise Park's more than $2 million.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very, very large park. And I was there yesterday morning, and sadly, people were taking down their tents. I mean, really, they were taking down their tents. So, I mean, there's an encampment. There's encampments, and it's more than just people hanging out. It's not a loitering. It's not, you know, homeless people, you know, grilling and with their bicycles. I mean, they are popping up tents and sleeping there. It's a residence for them. So I think it's really not just a task force. I think the task force did its job. And I think maybe it's to come back to the council and have a much larger conversation.
Any other comments?
It just, and now we're so hard on this, and I just realized coming back to it.
I would agree that if we do have enough time, I don't want us to come back and, you know, spin our wheels and go over it all over again and condense it to something more specific if they're gonna just keep the caveat in there. And it's kind of like we're doing all this work, and then in the end, we run the risk of losing it within a snap of a finger, and it just seems like we're doing a lot of this, and we're just not clear that they might give us those funds, so.
You bring up a really good point. It was told to me on multiple occasions that Measure J makes recommendations, and the city council makes a choice. The shading at Mizell is a really good example. It was given to them almost 5 years ago. And so we made a recommendation, and Measure J made the recommendation, and the city council is going to do what they want to do with it, and that is really all we can do. If we want to, we can build a Facebook page and a Twitter feed, and I mean, we can say, you know, let's go after Sunrise Park, and I'm sure we can get a lot of people in the community behind it. That effort is definitely available, because nothing's going to happen for a year. I mean, the 17-18 money for Measure J is already allocated, and they are already, it's already in motion. And so we were really going to take the next 12 months to do community work together to really see what it is that would be developed, right? I mean, we're very clear about that. And then the first distribution of money would be 18-19.
I found, the reason I brought that up was after I attended last Thursday night and saw all of these plans and ideas that they were getting from people what to do downtown, my feeling was that $2 million ain't going to happen. That was my consensus, my feeling. They're going to use that money because they have the caveat to use it. And they're looking at the conversations of the council was the park is so important. And the design of it, when people are looking down from the hotel, the roofs, the designs, the fixtures, everything about it. That, I mean, Maryland wasn't even an issue in the discussion. It was all about all of these designs that were put out to all of us. Some of the designs were garden ideas that you were thinking of to do in Sunrise Park. So I just felt when I left the meeting, that was my gut feeling, that I thought, we're not going to see that $2 million. They're going to use it because they all have ideas of what they want, and nobody was inconsistent. The only good thing they thought was that Michael Braun said, and he's going to, he's putting grass in.
Does
That's
that
on him.
include sprinkler?
Pardon?
Did that include sprinkler with
Yes,
that?
yeah. He was doing the irrigation
Yes.
and putting in the grass. Just so there would be something, so it would look finished looking when everything opens the end of August, 1st of September. For their ribbon cutting. They don't want dirt there from the hotel. So it's going to be, yeah, that's all going to be done. But as far as the rest, there was only 2 of the 5 that were taking the position of, let's just get the grass in, let's leave it alone, and we'll come back to it. As far as, do we want to put entertainment, do we want to put this, do we want to, there were discussions about, should the police station be there, shouldn't it be there? There was all of that going on. And that was just my feeling, that I didn't see us getting the $2 million.
I looked at the $2 million as being $500,000 a year over 4 years to them, and that's not a lot of money to them. I mean,
That's correct.
you know, if it comes out, they only get 500 of it, 500,000 a year. And they might think that won't do anything for them. That barely, plant a few trees for them.
But
Do we need to get the people who are our liaisons on council and see if we have their ear, Jenny and Mills? I mean, they are supposed to be our liaisons, correct?
I like that reminder. Ginny was in favor of lighting and other things in Sunrise Park, in the parks. And Chris was the strongest voice to say, I'm not so sure that Measure J is money for homelessness. It wasn't sold to the community that way, and we should look at that. So if they are our liaisons, they are probably pretty strong supporters of parks.
I'm thinking back to the meeting, and I didn't realize at the beginning of Thursday night's meeting that there wasn't going to be a presentation of what the park looked like. What they put up was, this is what you could have. It could either be this or this or this. And they were in a fact-finding position, which I found interesting because I thought the last meeting they left, they had gotten their facts and they were coming in to do a presentation, sort of what it would look like. But that wasn't what was Thursday night. It was, these are the things that you could have, and now we're here to gather ideas. And that was some of the putting a dot on the plants that you liked and putting a dot on the water features that you liked. So I was kind of surprised that it was going to be just an open discussion about what the council wanted at that point in time. And I think that's what you were experiencing was, do we want just grass for a while until we kind of look around and see what it looks like? Which, if I were voting there, I'd be supportive of that. Live there for a while and see what it looks like, and it won't be ugly in the meantime. But I
think it ended with them, we've got all the dots, we've got all these stuff, we'll be coming back to you and making a presentation after we analyze everything that everybody here said they liked, and we'll put together a plan. So it was just an exercise meeting.
I got a feeling it's 2 to 4 years away from something that Rob said. That,
yeah.
you know, hey, we could spend $500,000, half of our money before they ever get around to their park. If we get ahead of them.
I'm wondering if we go back to the Measure J next meeting and make our option that we'd like to continue to work with you as they had talked about, working with the Arts Commission and with us to work on a plan. We are talking about 18, 19 money, not, 17, 18 money. So it's not as if we whipped out a plan in the next 3 months, we were going to be approved and go forward with it. So maybe our option is that we go in and say, we're willing to work with you. However, we do need some commitment that our time spent developing with arts and with yourselves will end up with some fruition that is, positive.
But were we hoping that when we went back and asked them to take that caveat out, then we would have what you're asking for? And as long as they have the caveat in there, they're looking at it as long as they have the upper hand with the caveat, why concede it? Why not keep it and have the option on their part? They could look at that as a good point of business.
I think also Measure J is really clear, and there was a commissioner who said it in comments, and that is, they're just making recommendations, and the council's going to do what they want to do.
That's true.
And so, and that was reiterated. They said, well, if that's the way it is, just tell us that, and we won't draw the community in.
Exactly.
And have everybody do all the work that they do. So I do think that there is that sense that they can only go so far, and it doesn't really matter.
Is there a need for us to go into them and say, this is our phase 1 plan, first-year plan? We want to do this? Not the whole overall like we presented before, but step 1 is going to be this, or is that?
No, I think as specific as possible is probably going to get the best response.
And then can the committee go back together and come up with a specific narrowing way to present to them?
It doesn't necessarily have to be done this month's meeting, does it?
Well, the
I don't
meeting's
think it-
Thursday,
This Thursday.
It can't be.
so,
I think if you wait a month, you're not going to lose by waiting a month.
I'm sorry.
Well, and like you said, the money is 18, 19, and even
Correct.
if there is a caveat, and the downtown park is pretty far away, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So we have some time to work on this with Measure J and with the city council, and then we're going to very likely have new council members in November, and so the conversation continues. So I think, Chairman, you make a great point. I think we should come back together. We should redefine what the theme is, narrow that theme, be very, very specific. Is it one park? Is it all parks? Is it one shaded area, multiple shaded, and be very clear. So yeah, I think hashing through it again and getting as
So can
specific.
we do that if you can all get together?
Yes,
and-
we'll do that.
And we'll discuss it.
And then I will also contact Measure J about getting on the agenda,
Perfect.
which won't be this Thursday, of course, but for their next meeting.
Everybody all right with that? Good. We do talk things through.
Yep.
This is healthy. Discussion on art in the park. Does that fall back under, or how do you feel?
no, this was brought to me by Jennifer Henning. She was supposed to be getting me some information for today's meeting after she met with her commission. I have not received anything from her. Basically, they're looking at is they have some art pieces that they need to find homes for. And one of them is I believe the hero dog that's up at the fire station next to Victoria Park. And they're looking at moving that piece into Victoria Park. But obviously, they hadn't had a meeting, a commission meeting with Public Arts for them to determine what pieces they were going to do, so.
Moving
I-
it from its current location?
Yes, across the street. I'm not sure why, because I don't have all that information. So I'm just going to have this moved on to next month's commission agenda, or until I get more information from Jennifer to know how to bring them forward to you. So,
Fine. I was at the dedication at the fire station.
Or put it in front of the dog park.
All right, reports and requests? Any commissioner requests?
Requests? Has the position of city clerk been filled? Jim was such a wealth of knowledge when he attended our meetings, and I really miss not having him to ask questions to when we're here.
right now, it's Kathy Hart is the interim city clerk. The city manager has put her in that position for a 6-month interim time frame. So,
Did Jim come to the meetings because he was part of it, or because he was requested? I mean, Jay was so good to have here, wasn't he?
Who are you talking?
Jay Thompson. When we
Oh.
had him attend our meetings, you could always ask him so many technical questions and protocol. Is that her position, or?
no, because he was chief of staff as well. So as my supervisor,
Oh.
he was attending the commission meetings.
I see.
And we, as you know, right now, we don't have a chief of staff. Kathy only came on as the interim city clerk. We have the Marcus Fuller as assistant city manager, and the intent was to look at hiring another assistant city manager. I'm not sure where we're at in that process.
Okay.
There is a new person, right, who I just met at the council meeting? The
Did you meet her?
Marcus introduced me to a new person?
We have a new city engineer,
Oh, that's what I meant.
right,
Okay.
and we also have a new city attorney. So
Okay.
we're still down a few people.
Could you, no, I'll wait till another place. Any other comments? Travis?
First of all, I thought this was like a really great meeting, that we had such good discussions today. I think that's wonderful. And that's one thing I like being on this commission. And one of the things that stem from that is, I thought we had the pickleball people, they're great and they're well organized, and they created this community, which I think is really great. And, for 7 years trying to order the dog park community, and I know the challenges of taking different people and trying to get them to come to meetings, but it made me think a little bit about, one of my concerns is people that don't come to the meetings, and awareness of the meetings, and, underrepresented portions of our population. And I'm just wondering if we should consider maybe, I know there's issues with the televising of the meetings, but we're on this break, maybe moving our meetings to one at the 2 community centers, and, using that as a chance to outreach to some of those people. I mean, I know we are being televised here, but this isn't normally where we're going, so it's probably confusing to people. I just want to throw that out, maybe it's a topic of another meeting, but maybe we should consider going out to the community centers to meet.
Any other comments? Commissioner Goodman?
I just wanted to let everyone know that the Palm Springs Unified School District Foundation received $7,500 in summer camp scholarships. And we're working with Vicki. And on Tuesday, June 6th, we're having a family evening at Kauai Elementary School to inform our families that their kids can go to camp this summer for free. And then we will work with, the foundation will work with Vicki on making sure that those forms are filled out and kids get registered. And so I thought that was very exciting that we're able to give out summer camp scholarships.
What school is that at?
It's Kauai Elementary School on June 6th. It is at 6:15. That is for Kauai families. All 3 Palm Springs elementary schools are getting the same information, and I'm hoping that we'll have family nights at the other 2 elementary schools, Cielo Vista Charter and Vista Del Monte, but I have not heard from them yet. And so I'm very excited that we're going to be able to take some Palm Springs Unified School District children and have them experience Parks and Recs camp this summer.
Any other comments?
Just one question. Vicki, are we being invited to the first day of camp this year like we were last year?
I haven't really talked with my staff much about camp. I know they're in the planning process. They had a meeting last Friday to plan the themes and stuff. So I'm sure we'll send some invites out for you. It won't be, as elaborate as last year because we won't have any playground to unveil. But first day camp will be on June 12th. So,
I would like to ask if you could invite the new city attorney, if he would come to our next meeting?
the city attorney?
Yes,
Okay.
just so everybody here knows him. And if we have any questions, we can ask him just briefly in his schedule, since he's now not from the outside, he's full-time for the city. Any other comments or questions or discussions? Staff?
I have no updates as of now.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you for using it.
Thank you.
You know,
Can I have that back?
Angela sent out
Oh, okay.
this invite
All right.